Welcome to Tiger Chainsaw Interviews. These exclusive interviews will give you a behind-the-scenes retrospective mixed in with some amazing secrets of your favorite games and franchises by the developers and creators of them. Now, if I have filmed the interview, you'll be able to watch it. Otherwise, it's a phone interview, so just sit back and relax. Now, I have done some incredible exclusive interviews with some amazing gaming legends in this community. So hit that sub button to make sure you don't miss any of those interviews. Alright, let's get to our interview of the day. Today, I am joined by perhaps the world record holder for the youngest game developer with a professionally published game at age 14. Martin Wheeler would go on to work in the gaming industry on titles like Rogue Ops, Terminator 2, Spider-Man 3, and the biggest hidden gem on the Game Boy Color, Warlocked. Martin is here to share his incredible journey in the gaming industry from the ZX Spectrum to the PS VR. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today. Now, you have an incredible story about how you got into video games and programming. We were talking before this interview, and I couldn't believe your journey and how it started. Martin, would you mind sharing it for everyone else to hear?
Yeah, I was very young. I think it's likely I was probably the youngest published game designer in the UK, maybe even the world, actually. So I loved games from the moment Space Invaders landed, which I guess in the UK, I think it arrived in 1978. So I would have just been 9 years old or thereabouts, and I just used to. We didn't have an arcade near us, but we would go on family trips to the coast, play at the seafront amusements, and we'd go in the arcades and play on like Space Invaders, Defender, Asteroids, that kind of stuff. I really loved all that kind of thing. But I mean, it wasn't until the first 8-bit home computers came along that I got into the idea that I might be able to make games. In fact, the reason I wanted a computer in the first place was so that I could play games on it. So about that time I'd just gone into secondary school, I guess about 11 years old, and you take a test to see. There was only one computer studies class in the school, and I didn't make it in, but my dad he bought me a ZX Spectrum, which was I think it was the most popular 8-bit home computer in the UK. So I basically taught myself coding, just simple coding from the manual, making really jerky, bad, flickery games in BASIC. And I just kept on doing this, and I would save the games that I made onto cassette tapes, and I started mailing them out to companies that I found in the back of computer magazines, saying, please check out my game. Here's the keys. Up, down, left, right, jump, whatever. And I used to draw the covers on the cassette tapes as well. And I got a lot of rejection letters. Well, I say a lot. I mean, actually, I probably got 2 or 3 where they actually bothered to reply and send the tape back. But eventually, I got a phone call from Virgin Games in London, and they wanted to publish Dr. Frankie and the Monster, which was a game I'd made, which was kind of like a very amateurish rip-off of Donkey Kong meets Pac-Man. And it wasn't that well made. I mean, I used a machine code compiler to make it like, playable speed. It kind of looked okay for the time, but it wasn't very well made. It was pretty flickery and not very good. But Virgin liked it. They wanted to publish it. And then they published another game that I designed called Sorcery. And then when they got their actual in-house team to rework Sorcery for the Amstrad computer, they did a really good job on it, and it was a great game, and it became very successful. And so I still didn't get into the computer studies class at any point, but I managed to get a job with Virgin as their junior designer when I left school at 16. And so that's how I got into my career in games.
I can't even imagine getting calls from video game studios and having them inquire about my work at that age. That is incredible. Martin, what did your parents think of this?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I wasn't. I was at a friend's house swapping copies of games when the call arrived, and I got home and my mum was on the doorstep. And she said, "Oh, you would have to be out when the man from Virgin phoned." So, yeah, it wasn't. I think my dad was really pleased, obviously, because I didn't get into computer studies at school, and he was obviously the one who bought me the computer and thought it would be a way to encourage me. Yeah, so I think my mum was probably pretty pleased as well.
Yeah.
I thought I'm going to be rich and famous, and this is amazing, wow. I didn't end up rich and famous, obviously, but it was at the time it was a big thing. And so some of the other, my friends at school, some of the kids also read about it in computer magazines and stuff, or found out. So yeah, it was it was quite a big thing to happen.
What a story! Wow! Let's move forward a little bit when you were a couple more years into your career. We were discussing offline about the story of Warlocked, which is one of the biggest hidden gems on the Game Boy Color. You said that you heard about it in a pub. Can you kind of share that story?
Yeah. Well, I also heard from Steve Clark, the coder, earlier today. So he said that the idea came from Fu, who was the director at Bit Studios. But I do remember talking. I thought it was with Steve. Maybe it was one of the other Bits coders. But we did talk about, would it be possible to make Warcraft on a Game Boy? With all the sprites moving around and everything. And we were trying to think up ways of doing it. So maybe like writing the sprites to the background and stuff, and sneaky ways of doing it. So yeah, it probably did come from a conversation about, could we technically do this? And then obviously the managing director, Fu, decided that we'd have a go at it.
You are credited with the graphics and game design for Warlocked. Can you explain to me your duties and how you helped create the game?
Yeah, the game design bit was really down to coming up with the mission objectives, and also designing the level layouts, including where all the buildings are, the terrain and the resources. So that's the kind of game design side of things, was actually building, and I had to playtest all the missions myself as well. And then there's also the side of coming up with all the units, which were loosely based on the early Warcraft games. So you have a hand-to-hand combat unit, then you've got a ranged unit with arrows, that kind of thing. We tried to add some extra different things like dragons that can obviously fly, and then we had the wizards as well, which was really, I think, because it was decided we should have a sort of Pokemon element to the game, so we came up with these sort of collectible characters, and each one having a special power. So I was responsible for all that, really, and then doing the graphics to represent them. I think Steve actually had the harder job, which was the technical side, which was actually making it all work on the Game Boy.
Now, who made the soundtrack and the music for Warlocked? I think it is one of the best soundtracks for any game on the Game Boy Color.
Yeah. The sound and the music was great. Actually, the music was by Jeroen Tell. I might be able to find a contact for you for him. But yeah, I think he did an amazing job on the music, and also there was some little bits of sampled speech in the game, which I didn't know any that was going to be in there. It was a really nice surprise when I first heard that. Yeah.
Were you the one responsible for the victory screens?
Yes, yeah, I did all the sort of cameo screens and stuff as well.
I love the Party on Grunt screen where they are all cheering with root beer. Yeah.
Yeah. Originally, that image, it didn't say root beer on the mugs. It was sort of implicit. It was actual proper beer. but they said, I think it was one of the guys at Nintendo America said, no, you got to make it clear that they're not drinking alcohol. So that was a feel-good picture.
Was Warlocked a smooth game from start to finish? I know you had previously worked on a ton of games, so how does this compare to the other projects that you were on?
Interestingly, both myself and Steve Clark, the coder, we both agreed it was a really fun project to work on, which we really enjoyed. We were left to get on with it ourselves without any intervention from the office, because we work remotely. Everyone on the project worked remotely, and I would say it was actually one of the smoothest projects that I've ever worked on. I don't really remember how long it took us to develop. I don't think it was any longer than sort of 5 months, maybe.
Oh.
I think I'll have to check with Steve. He'll probably remember, but I remember it being a fairly straightforward project. There were no like major difficulties with it. It was a really nice project to work on.
What was the reception when the game was released? I've talked with a lot of game developers before, and it always kind of seems to be an air of nervousness when the game is about to be released. What was the reception for you? Were you excited to get it out and see what other people thought?
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's over 20 years ago now. I'm trying to think how I felt about it. I don't remember there being any big deal about finishing, really, other than, great, we finished it. Yeah, great, Nintendo of America have approved it. Everyone thinks it's great. We were happy to get it out there. Then we started to get some really nice reviews. It was really amazing. We got like IGN gave it a great review, and it got like as well as they gave it an award for the strategy game, and I think the readers did as well. It was really nice to get that kind of feedback. Yeah, I think everyone was pleased. I also had the feeling that we pretty much went on to another project straight away. So there wasn't really time to get too excited about it.
Warlocked is a game that I discovered about 5 years ago. I was researching hidden gems on the Game Boy Color, and it seemed like it was at the top of every list. I ended up buying it and playing it, and it totally blew me away. The humor, the gameplay, the soundtrack all blend together to make one of the best experiences on the Game Boy, and the controls are super smooth. I'm shocked this game is not more recognized. Were you surprised that it didn't sell better?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm trying to think again. I mean, we never really. I didn't ever receive any sales figures from Bit Studios, and my contract. I was basically a contractor, so I wasn't. Even if Warlocked had gone, like to number one or something, I don't think I would have been due any royalties or anything. So in a way, I guess I didn't pay too much attention to the actual sales figures, but it was only a couple of years later that I was told, oh, actually, no, it didn't do very well at all. And I think that was when we were trying to do a sequel based on Warlocked, and we realised, well, one thing against it is the fact that the original one didn't sell very, very well. So yeah, it was disappointing, I think, in the long run. Yeah, it didn't make any difference financially because I was basically doing a 9 to 5, and that was it.
You mentioned the sequel, and I've heard about it. There are some screenshots up and some videos of it, and I'm super bummed to see that it didn't pan out. How far into development were you with the sequel?
Yeah, there was there was a playable demo, loads and loads of sprites on screen, maybe two or three levels that you could play. It was quite different in style from Warlocked. It wasn't so real-time strategy. It was in a way a little bit more like, I don't know if you remember that arcade game Gauntlet. It had sort of elements of that to it. There is some videos of it somewhere online. I might be able to try and find you some links. But yeah, eventually we pitched it to various publishers, but we didn't get anything anywhere with it, unfortunately.
That is such a shame, because I'm sure it would have been an amazing game. Warlocked was such a blast, and I wish it sold better so we got that sequel. Now, Martin, I'm going to ask my favorite question. I ask it to everyone, but what is that one memory you will always associate with Warlocked? It could be something funny, something serious, but what's that one memory you will never forget when helping create Warlocked?
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It's hard to recall particular things about it, apart from the fact that I made the game. The entirety of it was made sitting in my attic, often dark evenings, and because the Game Boy didn't have a backlit screen, so I had like an angle poised lamp. So I just spent hours sitting under this lamp, beaming on the screen, squinting at this tiny little display for so long, and I think that's actually when I started to need glasses. So the memory of making the game, although it was a great project to work on, it was great fun, and I really enjoyed working with the other guys on it remotely. There was some kind of like Dickensian aspect to it, like being a watchmaker tinkering away in the dark with this little lamp. Really, because that's what the Game Boy was, this little really small piece of hardware with a screen that didn't have a backlight. I really wish it had a backlight to it. That would have made so much difference.
Since moving on from the Warlocked project, what are you up to these days? Are you still in the gaming industry? Are there any games or projects that we can help support or look forward to?
Yeah, well, I've been in and out of games since Warlocked. I spent some time in I produce electronic music under the name Vector Lovers. So I actually released several albums. This would have been a couple. Actually, I think it was 2003 was about when I left Bit Studios. So I did music for a while. I got back into doing games when our iPhone came out. I did a few iOS games. One was a kind of stealth strategy game called Surveillant, and also I did a kind of funny endless runner type game called Go Robo. Then I've just been kind of doing contract work, and also the last project I did myself was a PlayStation VR game called Separation, which came out in 2020. It was a solo effort, so I actually did the coding on this myself, as well as the design and the audio, and it actually took me 4 years to make the game.
Oh, wow.
And I think about maybe a couple of thousand people bought it, so so not really a huge seller for that amount of work, unfortunately. I still love to make games when I get the opportunity, when I can. I mean, I'm actually at the moment I've got my mother living with me. She's 90 and she's got dementia, so I'm caring for her in the day a lot of the time. But when I can, I'm trying to make things, prototype. So I started a Kickstarter this week actually, to hopefully raise funds to make a PC non-VR version of Separation. Okay. So I think I sent you a link to it. But yeah, if you can let people know about that. It would be great to have any support. So yeah, basically I try and do a bit more game dev in my spare time as a solo indie developer.
It sounds like you're quite into the music scene, even creating your own albums. Are there any video game soundtracks that you think are really well done, or a few that are your favorites? Or do you not really listen to that type of music?
Oh, is there any video game soundtracks I'm really into? Well, I liked, I thought Journey was really nice. I kind of like more ambient stuff in games, I think. But yeah, not off the top of my head. Recently, Sable is nice as well. Has a really nice soundtrack by Shedworks. That's got a really nice soundtrack. Yeah.
Okay, Martin, I've got one final question. Your journey in the gaming industry is incredible. From a 14-year-old boy developing video games by himself to a developer that is single-handedly creating PSVR games. Do you think your 14-year-old self would believe what you're doing today?
I would have been absolutely amazed at 14 if I could have tried VR then as it is now, on like Oculus Quest or something like that. I just think that would have totally blown my mind. I think that's VR has definitely been the thing that's really got me excited again about gaming. I think I'd always really imagined that it would be fantastic to be in a game and to lose the borders of the screen and to be able to just look around inside the game world. So I think, yeah, some of the technical advances. Also, if I could have shown my 14-year-old self Grand Theft Auto or something, the amazing technical advances that have happened since I started, that would have been unbelievable, definitely. But yeah, in a way, I'm still trying to do the same sort of stuff I was doing back then, just making things work and playing around with ideas.
Martin, I wanted to thank you for your time today and sharing your journey from being perhaps the world's youngest published developer for video games to creating Warlocked, a masterpiece on the Game Boy Color, to continuing your journey in the gaming industry with PSVR games. You definitely have a diverse portfolio, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your experience and memories with us today. Martin, from all of us, thank you. And of course, thank you, the listener, for tuning in. If you love exclusive interviews with game creators and game developers, make sure you hit that sub button to watch and listen to plenty of more interviews that I have coming up. Thanks for listening.